Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, The Legends of the Ferengi. By me, Quark, as told to Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Let's get one thing clear. My esteemed publisher paid me to record my book, which I did. Well, actually, I didn't record all of it. I jobbed out parts of it to a couple of fat-lobed Ferengi named Gala and Kono. Actually, it's not really my book. I jobbed the writing out to a couple of fathead humans named Bear and Wolf. But the point is, no one got paid to write and record an introduction. That my publisher wants for free. And now I have to do this myself. Life is so unfair. Anyway, here it is, the introduction. Everything you need to know to enjoy my classic audiobook. Ferengi, natives of the planet Ferenginar, a short, wily, magnificently lobed spacefaring people. A picture of these strikingly handsome folk can be found on the box this audiobook came in. The one with the sexy lobes is none other than myself. Rules of acquisition. The 285 guiding principles that form the basis of Ferengi business philosophy. That's a direct quote from my previous book, The Ferengi Rules of Acquisition, by Quark, as told to Ira Stephen Bear. Still available in a bookstore near you. Legends of the Ferengi. A collection of stories, fables, philosophical meditations, and outright lies based on the Ferengi rules of acquisition, just like it says on the cover. Well, there you go. The introduction, by me, Quark, son of Keldar, proprietor of Quark's Bar, Grill, Gaming House, and Holosuite Arcade, a wholly owned subsidiary of Quark Enterprises, Inc. I hope you liked it. Now, on to the good stuff. I really hate working for free. Rule number 1. In the village of Noi, there once lived a shopkeeper named Ob. Though his shop was small, he was well known for his many eccentricities. Chief among them was his insistence on honesty in all things.
My goods are of the finest quality. My prices are fair and reasonable, and my weighing scales are accurate to 1/1000th of a milliop. I am, needless to say, the least popular man in the village. Most of what I sell, I buy myself, like these tube grubs.
One morning, Ob was seated behind the counter when a customer entered. This was quite an event, since no one in Noi would shop at the store of such an obvious lunatic.
Come in, come in. You must be new around here. Do you really want to buy something? Yes, of course. I've got a long way to go, and I'm in a hurry to get there. 1 canister of beetle snuff for the road. Large. Beetle snuff? Oh, there's a can of it here somewhere. Where are you headed? Corpa. Quite a ways, Corpa. There, 1 large canister of the top-quality beetle snuff. That's 13 strips of latinum. Aren't you going to count it? No need. I can see you have trustworthy lobes. Takes a lobe to know a lobe. What What's your name, stranger? Greb. Greb of Corpa.
It was a full half-hour later, when Obe was closing out the day's accounts, that he discovered that Greb had overpaid him by a half-slip of Latin.
12, 12 and 1/2, 13, 13 and 1/2. Oh, no! I've got to catch Greb and return this half-slip or my name isn't honest Obe. What did he say? Corpa, wasn't it?
Obe was never to reach his destination. Halfway to Corpa, he was set upon and brutally murdered by assassins hired by none other than Greb. It seems the man from Corpa had been carrying on a secret affair with Obe's wife for several years. Shortly after the funeral, Greb moved into Obe's house, married his wife, and took over his store, where he made a fortune overcharging his customers for inferior merchandise.
Get in line. You'll all get your turn.
Legend has it that the townspeople of Noy, wanting to make an example of Obe's foolishness, decided to bury the shopkeeper with the half-slip of latinum that he had so desperately wanted to return. Unfortunately, someone, probably Greb, stole the latinum out of Obe's hand during the funeral. From the sad tale of Obe came the first rule of acquisition. Once you have their money, you never give it back. Rule number 9. Grand Negus Freck was the pioneer of Ferengi iconosolipsistic mathematics. He wrestled with setting down the universal formulas that describe the fundamental building blocks of reality. What you are about to hear is an excerpt from his personal ledger.
All right. Opportunism plus Latinum equals nirvana. Latinum plus beetle snuff equals clear sinuses. Greed minus morality equals happiness. Greed is greater than love. Profit equals greed. Profit equals everything. Profit equals happiness. No, none of those are right. Wealth plus unhappiness equals null space, since wealth equals happiness, and, well, happiness plus or minus happiness equals 0. Instinct minus opportunity equals misery. Yes. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit. Now I've got it. That's quite good.
This is the first ever record of the 9th rule of acquisition. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit. As you humans would say, Eureka. Rule number 10. When the scribes of the sacred illuminated balance sheet were about to put out their commemorative 1000th edition, they approached Grand Negus Brolock and they asked him to provide a parable, some little story, to illustrate the 10th rule of acquisition. Brolock pocketed the customary bribe, thought for a moment, and then spoke the following words of wisdom.
Some rules need no explanation.
By taking the amount of the scribe's bribe and calculating it out on a per-word basis, this 5-word observation earned Brolock the distinction of uttering the most expensive words in Ferengi history. This demonstrated Brolock's complete mastery of the 10th rule of acquisition. Greed is eternal. This edifying story. Wait a minute, Rom. I said hold the echoes. That's what happens when you try to make a few strips of Latinum by getting the publisher to hire your brother as an audio engineer. Oh, get out of the way. Let me do it. This edifying story. There. That's better. This edifying story about Grand Nagus Brolock became its own parable to illustrate the Ferengi saying, avarice never dies. And if it's really lucky, it gets to be Grand Nagus. Rule number 13. The 13th rule of acquisition is easily remembered by comparing 13 things worth doing for money with 13 things not worth doing for money. Here's the list of 13 things worth doing for money. Number 1. Jump up and down on one foot until your hip bone is pounded into dust. Number 2. Lie to your boss. Number 3. Tell your boss the truth. Number 4. Help a rich old Ferengi across the street. Number 5. Shove a rich old Ferengi into traffic. Number 6. Sell people ground-up beetles and convince them to snort them up their noses. Number 7. Stick stuff in your ears. Number 8. Stick stuff in other people's ears. Number 9. Create your own religion. Number 10. Spread vicious rumors about your enemies. Number 11. Spread vicious rumors about your friends. Number 12. Spread vicious rumors about yourself. Number 13. Hang out with Klingons. Got that? Now, here's the list of 13 things not worth doing for money. Number 1. Nothing. Number 2. Nothing. Number 3. Nothing. Number 4. Nothing. Well, you get the point. There's not one thing, much less 13 things, not worth doing for money. Remember this and never forget the 13th rule of acquisition. Anything worth doing is worth doing for money. Rule number 16. The following is a standard rider attached to any quotation of the 16th rule of acquisition. Before listening to this rule, raise your right hand to your left lobe and your left hand to your right lobe and recite the following sacred Ferengi oath. I, Quark, of course you would use your own name, do hereby swear to never, under any circumstances, correctly quote this rule to any non-Ferengi. Furthermore, I swear, under penalty of eternal bankruptcy, that even under the most extreme duress, even if a Cardassian is doing unspeakable things to my lobes, I will maintain that the 16th rule of acquisition, the most sacred of all Ferengi precepts, is a deal is a deal. Period. No further stipulation, no extra clause. That's the rule. Anything else you might have heard is purely rumor. Thank you. You may now hear the 16th rule of acquisition, which is, of course, a deal is a deal until a better one comes along. Rule number 19. Now it's time for a pop quiz. Place your bets. Place your bets. What are the first 2 words any Ferengi learns in the human language? Need a clue? Think back to rule number 1. Can't think of it? You heard it at the beginning of this audiobook. Weren't you listening? Oh, I'm sorry. Time's up. You not only forfeit your bet, but you have to pay a forgetfulness fine of 3 slips of latinum, or whatever you've got in your pocket, whichever is more. What are the first 2 words any Ferengi learns in the human language? No refunds. And that includes, by the way, what you paid for this audiobook. This should help you remember the 19th rule of acquisition, which can be found printed on literally every item manufactured on Ferenginar. Since this is an audiobook, I'll tell you what it is. The 19th rule of acquisition is satisfaction is not guaranteed. Rule number 21. Here's an excerpt from the ancient medical audio disc, Guarding Your Investment, Keeping Your Children Profitable, by Dr. Posk of the Ferengi Wellness Institute.
In our last chapter, we dealt with the problem of excessive, compulsive ooh-moxing in male children, ages 1 to 17. Now we must turn our attention to one of the most stressful events in any young Ferengi's life, the attainment ceremony. Parents, relax, it's all right. Rest assured that the ceremony is largely a formality. When given the choice between spending time with a friend or receiving a bar of gold-pressed latinum, no Ferengi lad in recent history has passed up the bar. Your son will make that right choice, too. All we suggest is that you make sure that the ceremony is held in a well-lit room, that both the friend and the bar of latinum are equidistant from your child, that the friend is strapped down and gagged to allow an unbiased outcome, and that the bar of latinum is placed at an angle that makes it as shiny as possible. Now, we highly discourage the use of the southern Ferenginar version of the attainment ceremony. Now, while watching your child and his best friend actually fight over the bar of latinum may be entertaining and profitable when you run the betting pool, injuries are frequent and can be costly with regard to the long-term growth of your investment. One final piece of advice. If your child fails the test, don't tell anyone. Just bribe everyone present to forget what they've seen and have your son repeat the test as many times as necessary until he gets it right. Good luck.
This excerpt from Posk's centuries-old text, still available for purchase at your local discmonger, shows that even from the beginning of Ferengi history, our people knew the fundamental truth of the 21st rule of acquisition. Never place friendship above profit. I would be remiss if I didn't offer my own advice about raising your basic family investments to a profitable status. This advice is free of charge, I might add, because my publisher said I had to include something extra in this audiobook so that you'd buy it, even though it's an abridged version of the published book, which I'd like to take this opportunity to point out is still available at your local bookstore. Follow this advice, and you'll raise profitable children. Greed isn't genetic. It has to be learned. Teach your children well. Rule number 33. Upon great and profitable reflection, I think it's the right moment to share with you a letter I sent to my publisher. To my beloved publisher, it is with much pleasure that I thank you for the latinum delivered to me as an advance on the forthcoming audiobook Legends of the Ferengi. In return, I am delighted to deliver this, the commentary on the 33rd rule of acquisition. I'd like this opportunity to say, for the record, what an honor it's been to work for you. To say that your treatment of me has been fair and equitable would be a vast understatement. I am in awe of your fairness, your good judgment, and your business acumen. I also think you are as attractive as you are wise. Your lobal cartilage is truly magnificent, and the texture of your nose wrinkles denotes a wealth of olfactory instinct. Please note that when I said I was being paid less than a starving vole merchant and I wouldn't record this book if you held a phaser to my head, It was just a jocular expression of good fellowship. Subsequent remarks that your royalty statements were steaming stacks of lying worm dung were made while I was recovering from a severe ear infection and under prescribed medication. And so I end this missive groveling in the hope that you will find my meager vocalizing fit for reproduction and further financial remuneration. May your audiobook empire continue to grow, and may your latinum shine forever. Respectfully yours, Quark, son of Keldar. Just a reminder from the people who brought you the 33rd rule of acquisition. It never hurts to suck up to the boss. Rule number 48. Every culture is faced with the necessity of teaching its children about the dangers of real life. In most societies, these lessons are taught by telling horror stories, featuring some nightmarish figure, the boogeyman of Earth, the Klingons' keeper of the dishonored dead, or the nameless traitor of Cardassia. On Ferenginar, this figure is the smiling partner. Ferengi children lose many a good night's sleep, cowering in fear at the thought of this terrible creature. Though the stories vary, its modus operandi is always the same. The smiling partner pretends to be your friend.
Of course. It's a perfect deal, and it's perfect for you. I mean, I'm losing my head skirt and just giving it away. I know, you've been told over and over again since you were a lobling, acquire. And here's your chance. A real bargain. You'll do your father proud, and more important, you'll make yourself rich.
The smiling partner is generous. He's likable, and he's sympathetic to your needs, and of course, he always smiles. But then, the moment after you sign the contract, those smiling teeth turn into razor-sharp blades that crunch down on your lobes and tear them from your head. And as you lie there, blood pouring from the stumps of your ears, the smiling partner laughs. Oh. It's no wonder that no Ferengi child ever forgets the 48th rule of acquisition. The bigger the smile, the sharper the knife. Which reminds me of my own rule of business etiquette that furthers the acquisition of everything a customer owns. Cultivate a grin that melts your customer's lobes. Rule number 48. The other day, I found this posting on the Ferengi Commodities Exchange on the desiccated collectibles market and pressed the play button.
Offered 35 discs of vacuum-desiccated Flink, famous hollow performer dead at 50. World-renowned star of the wildly popular Swamp King series, found dead in notorious Kefkan accommodation house of beetle snuff overdose. Grand Negazek declares day of mourning for actor voted 7 years in a row sexiest lobes on Ferenginar. Winner of the Golden Lobe for his performance in Privateer of the Swampways, the first of the Swamp King series. Credited with giving the Swamp King both his swashbuckling style and his famous catchphrase, "Never ask when you can take." Please note, due to his indulgent lifestyle, there is an extremely limited supply of Flink available. Regretfully, much of the mass was too deteriorated to withstand proper desiccation. So buy now, while there's still some Flink left, and you too can be a Swamp King. Caution. Unusually high levels of worm wine, beetle snuff, dextromethametrohebalazine, and other contaminants present in his remains make Flink highly combustible. Please keep discs away from open flames.
Flink may be gone. In fact, he's been gone a very long time. But his remains have been immortalized, along with his most famous line, which is the 52nd rule of acquisition. Never ask when you can take. Rule number 59. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to answer a few of the letters I received after the publication of my runaway bestseller, still available in bookstores, The Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. Here's a typical example. Dear Quark, you are such a wise man. I was hoping you could give me some advice. I've inherited several thousand bars of latinum and don't know what to do with it. Can you help me? Signed, Pockets Full of Platinum. Oh, dear Pockets. My advice to you is simple. Hire me as your investment broker for a tiny fraction of your profits, not to exceed 50%. I will manage your entire portfolio. I do this because I am a kind man, and you are very, very deserving of my help. I guarantee by the time I'm done, you will never have to worry about your latinum again. Yours in profit, Quark. Another. Dear Quark, I'm dating a beautiful and insatiable Betazoid woman. No matter what I do, and I do a lot, it never seems to be enough. I love her very much, but I don't seem to be able to satisfy her. You showed so much wisdom in your best-selling book, The Ferengi Rules of Acquisition, still available in bookstores, that I am confident that you will be able to advise me in this matter. What should I do? Signed, Unlucky in Love. Dear Unlucky, oh, I feel your pain. Enclosed, please find a prepaid ticket to Deep Space Nine. As soon as you receive it, give it to your girlfriend and send her to me. Don't wait. Do it now. Okay. Is she gone? Good. I await her. I promise you, she will not leave this station without achieving a state of complete and utter satisfaction. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much experimentation required, I will find a way to end her suffering, and yours as well. Rest assured, she'll be in good hands. Your humble servant, Quark. Please keep those cards and letters coming. What better way for me to illustrate the 59th rule of acquisition? Free advice is seldom cheap. And humans say talk is cheap. If they only knew. Rule number 62. As we all know, the leading cause of death on Ferengi remains accidental vehicular collision. This has been true for hundreds of years. Well, barring the snail steak food poisoning epidemic of 11,902. And this will doubtless be true for hundreds more. People often ask, are Ferengi really that inept when it comes to vehicular navigation? I mean, how hard is it to control a skimmer? Frankly, it's pretty easy. Yet the skimmer death toll continues to mount. And I can sum up the problem in one word. Ferengi road design. Okay, that's 3 words, but it's one thought. Take, for example, the most heavily traveled skimmerway on Ferengi, Skimmer Interchange 405, just outside West Wormwood. I'll let you in on a well-known secret. The loops and hairpin turns of this interchange clearly form the ideograms, drink Sluggo-Cola, it's good for you. Subliminal marketeers for the Yan Corporation determined centuries ago that frequently traveled skimmer routes became imprinted on the driver's brain. So, what better way to increase product awareness than to make the very roads themselves advertising logos? Sluggo Cola, who pioneered this technique, used it to completely take over the soft drink market from Ilvasser, their closest competitor. Unfortunately, the tricky turn required to complete the ideogram for slug has proven almost impossible to navigate on a rainy day, and it rains almost every day on Ferenginar. Still, subsidies from Sluggo Cola have made the Ferengi Skimmerway Construction Department one of the most well-endowed public trusts on all of Ferenginar, and it's hard to argue with success, know what I mean? So, drink Sluggo Cola. Just watch out for that last turn. And remember the 60-second rule of acquisition. The riskier the road, the greater the profit. Rule number 75. Ferengi don't usually discuss this with outsiders, but even now, in the great age of space travel, Ferengi don't really like to leave home. For one thing, it's hard to get good tube grubs off-world, and even though the weather on Ferenginar may leave something to be desired, it is consistent. Besides, when you get right down to it, most known cultures insist that their females be clothed and allowed to speak. In fact, for centuries, it was nearly impossible to get Ferengi to leave their silent, naked wives and wriggling, well-stocked larders and head into space. This resulted in the great overpopulation crisis of 18123, when it was said that no raindrops ever hit the ground because there were so damn many Ferengi heads in the way. Then, one day, a rumor spread that a Ferengi prospector named Mad Zook had found massive deposits of latinum on the distant world of Chimera Pi. Soon Ferengi homes everywhere bore the sign, "Gone to Chimera," and it wasn't long thereafter that rumors of other mother lodes on even more distant planets drifted back to Ferenginar. Eventually, the rumors were traced back to the Ferengi Office of Population Control, but by then it was too late. Hundreds of millions of Ferengi had sought their fortunes in space. And when they got there, they discovered an interesting thing. Aliens. Or, in the Ferengi parlance, Gublatrop Yobs, which literally translates into bank accounts without brains. Because let's face it, on Ferenginar, the only people you can try to exploit are other Ferengi. And they're a suspicious, thrifty, economically savvy bunch who are just as likely to be the exploiters as the exploited. Too often, negotiations between Ferengi end up in stalemates. But Gublatrop Yobs, aha, that's another story. So, maybe Mad Zook was a figment of the government's imagination, and maybe there's no Chimera Pi. But as long as there's a Gublatrop Yob born every 21 billionth of a second, then Ferengi will travel to the stars. Thus, there's more than a grain of truth to the 75th rule of acquisition. Home is where the heart is, but the stars are made of latinum. Rule number 76. It's said that humor doesn't translate. Take, for instance, comedy entertainments produced on Earth, with the exception of the universally recognized comic genius of the Three Stooges. Ferengi find humans humorless, dour, sanctimonious boobs who are more fun to laugh at than laugh with. So, when I describe Ferengi humor, I will understand if other species scratch their collective heads. Let's take, for example, the two greatest comedians of Ferenginar during the golden age of silly bwahahas. See, already I can tell you're not getting this. Gormy Gormatop, famous for his comic character Clang the Incontinent Klingon, and Durf, son of Dorf, who left them rolling in the aisles with his on-the-mark portrayal of Schlork, the stuttering Vulcan. To this day, every Ferengi instantly recognizes their famous taglines. First, here's Gormy doing Clang, the incontinent Klingon.
I will kill you where you stand. But first I must visit waste extraction.
A riot, huh? Now, here's Durf doing Schlork, the stuttering Vulcan.
That's not. That's not logical.
I'm telling you, these guys are funny. They also hated one another. In fact, the Gormy-Durf feud, or as Durf would prefer, the Durf-Gormy feud, is one of the defining characteristics of the golden age of silly bwahas. Not only would these two not share the same bill, they wouldn't even perform in the same cities. Back in the golden age of silly bwahas, you were either a Durf city or a Gormy city. And then one day, the impossible happened. It was announced that Gormy and Durf would be appearing together on the same program, a gala memorial service commemorating the 30th anniversary of the death of the Swamp King himself, Flink. Remember Flink? Immortalizer of the 52nd rule of acquisition, never ask when you can take? It turned out that both Durf and Gormy were rabid Flink fans. You see, Flink gave Gormy his first break, playing a cabin boy in one of Flink's last films, Swamp King at Sunset. And everyone knows Durf was married, briefly, to Flink's 8th wife. So, Gormy extended the hand of friendship to his old foe Durf and suggested they bury the hatchet and appear together for the sake of Flink and the potential of the biggest box office gross in memorial service history. Gormy even went so far as to promise Durf that he could be the closing act. Well, to the surprise of everyone, including probably Gormy, Durf accepted. It's said that more Ferengi paid to see the live transmission of the Flink tribute than paid for any other event in Ferengi history. And though the Swamp King remained a popular figure, even in death, everyone knew they were turning in to see Durf and Gormy share a stage for the first time. So, imagine the shock that reverberated across Ferenginar when Gormy stepped out on stage dressed as Durf's beloved Schlork the Stuttering Vulcan. As Durf looked on in horror, Gormy proceeded to do Durf's entire act. Gormy had planned this moment for years, secretly studying recordings of Durf and waiting for this moment to strike.
It's not logical.
As the audience convulsed in laughter, Gormy stripped off his Schlork suit to reveal his Clang costume and proceeded to run through a brilliant rendition of the incontinent Klingon, concluding his act with the newly brilliant line,
I will kill you where you stand, but it's not logical.
This caused people all over Ferengi to soil their own undergarments from hysterical laughter. Gormy stepped off the stage just in time to see Durf being taken away by Emergency Medical Services, Incorporated. Gormy later admitted that he never even liked Flink. Durf never performed in public again. Gormy had gotten the last laugh by remembering the 76th rule of acquisition. Every once in a while declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies. And you can profit by remembering its corollary. The important thing is to always keep your opponent guessing, which leads to the corollary of the corollary, the 85th rule of acquisition. Never let the competition know what you're thinking. Which takes us to a classic Ferengi joke. How can you tell when a Ferengi is thinking? Give up? You can smell the wood burning. Well, I can tell you're not getting this. So much for the golden age of silly bwahahas. Rule number 82. Stop pretending to laugh, if you ever started, and stop whatever else you're doing. This is important. I don't care if you are in the middle of umoxing yourself. Pick up the box this audiobook came in. Take a good look at the front, at the back. Open it up. Close it up. Then hold it out from you at arm's length and observe this perfect summation of the 82nd rule of acquisition. The flimsier the product, the higher the price. Rule number 97. This is the only rule ever coined by Grand Nagus Unz, also known as Unz the Invisible. Supposedly, Unz dedicated his whole life to profit, focusing on it to such an extent that everything else in his life dropped away. As the story goes, Unz never ate, never drank, never slept, spoke to no one, and saw no one. According to legend, he spent every hour of his life covertly manipulating and controlling the Ferengi economy. How he achieved this remains a bit of a puzzle. After all, by the time he died, it was said that no one had spoken to him for over 70 years. In fact, there are some Ferengi scholars who claim that Unz never existed. They believe that for this entire reign, Ferenginar had no Grand Nagus at all, and that this rule is a part of an elaborate cover-up designed to make people believe in Unz. Still, other Ferengi believe Unz never died and is still controlling the Ferengi economy to this day. The no-Unzers and the eternal Unzers are so violently opposed to one another that any written statement siding with one or the other invites immediate and deadly reprisal. But, dead or alive, real or imaginary, you gotta admit, if you're a Nagus, you're laughing all the way to the divine treasury. So, valid or not, we present to you what is sometimes called the 97th rule of acquisition. Enough is never enough. Rule number 99. Enough is never enough. I remember when I was a lobling and how special adults made me feel when I first uttered the word mine. That was a special moment. Just as profitable was my realization about the meaning of trust, which I captured in an essay that I wrote as a second-year student at the Hop-a-Wup Academy for Young Loblings. I saved it. Trust by Quarky, son of Keldar. Once, I loaned my brother Rom my Marauder Mo action figure. He lost the plasma whip. Now my Marauder Mo has no whip. If the Klingons attack, he will be defenseless. Not only that, but the resale value of my action figure has been severely compromised. I trusted Rom. Once, I told my father where I kept my birthday latinum. Now it's gone. He took it. I trusted my Fafa. Once, when I was a first-year student at Hop-a-Wup Academy, I agreed to do the economic theory homework of Blork, son of Blout. But I did not insist on payment in advance. I still have not received my fee, even though I have sent Blork regular bills and he's accruing interest at an alarming rate. I may have no recourse but to hire a collections agent. I trusted Blork. Once I showed my friend Goem how to omox himself. He told my Moogie on me. She was angry. She put numbing ointment on my ears for a month. I didn't have any fun for a month. I trusted Goem. Once, you asked me to stay after school and polish the desk monitors. You left me alone in the classroom. You thought your things were safe inside your locked desk, but they weren't. I'm a very good lockpick. Inside, I found some very disturbing pictures of you. You were in a frock room, talking with fully clothed women. You were even letting them talk to you. You are a very sick Ferengi and a danger to society. But I'm young and immature enough to overlook that. As long as you pay me 3 slips of latinum per month for the duration of my stay at Hopawup. You trusted me. Trust is bad. As you can see, even as a young lobling, I understood the 99th rule of acquisition. Trust is the biggest liability of all. By the way, the teacher gave me an A for that paper. Rule number 102. At Hopawup Academy, I learned to grasp concepts like profitability and other things like latinum. I liked anything with numbers. Here's a typical math problem. You fill in the blanks with the correct numbers and then use the overall result to validate one of the rules of acquisition. Ready? The lifespan of a Mysium bogfly is how many hours? 12 hours. Lifespan of a tube grub is how many weeks? 10 weeks. Shelf life of a chilled tube grub is how many months? 7 months. How much time does it take snail juice to spoil? 193 days. Lifespan of a woolly slug, that's 12 years. Lifespan of a Federation human, approximately 130 years, but seems a lot longer because their lives are so boring. Lifespan of a Klingon warrior. Oh, who cares? Any day is a good day for one of those smelly psychotics to die. Lifespan of a Ferengi. Up to 300 years with proper lobe maintenance. What's the shelf life of a bar of latinum? Forever. Shelf life of a strip of latinum? Forever. Shelf life of a slip of latinum? Forever. Do the math yourself, but any way you figure it, the results will still validate the 102nd rule of acquisition. Nature decays, but latinum is forever. I find it reassuring to know that my assets will outlive me. Rule number 104. On Ferenginar, religion and marketing go hand in hand. At least they do now, after what happened in the year 207. That's when Grand Nagus Gint, the first Grand Nagus, the enlightened prophet of greed, died in an unfortunate tooth-sharpening accident. Ferengi worldwide went into a deep, dark depression. Gint had not named a successor. Would he turn out to be the first and only Grand Nagus? All of Ferenginar held his breath to find out. Then, one day, a voice cried out above the wailing and the weeping.
Fear not! Gint will return to us, his mind as sharp as his teeth.
The voice belonged to Yost, a charismatic young Ferengi.
If every single Ferengi purchases a Gint memorial figurine and prays to it nightly, the blessed exchequer will release Gint from the divine treasury and allow him to descend back down to Ferenginar. It'll be good.
Yost's message swept the planet. It is believed that there were approximately 3 billion Ferengi alive at the time, but archaeologists have uncovered over 8 billion Gint figurines. They're the most common artifact on Ferenginar and are often used to this day as back scratchers. But despite this show of pious consumerism, Gint never came back. On the other hand, Yost, who owned a sizable share in the factories manufacturing the figurines, quickly became the richest man on Ferenginar. So rich, in fact, that he himself became the second Grand Nagus. His first official act was to reveal the second rule ever created, the 104th Rule of Acquisition. Now, as people came to appreciate the truth of the rule, they realized that in some strange way, Yost had truly embodied the spirit of Gint and was a worthy Grand Nagus indeed. So, in honor of Yost, Gint, and 8 billion back scratchers, I present to you the 104th Rule of Acquisition. Faith moves mountains of inventory. And just a little reminder to you pious humans, the meek can inherit the earth, the Ferengi will take the rest. But back to 104. If you're puzzled how the second rule was named the 104th, too bad. You should have read the best-selling collector's item, The Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. Go buy it, or remain confused. Hey, it's up to you. Rule 111. It's important to keep in mind that the rules of acquisition are more than just dry aphorisms gathered in a book. They are rich treasure troves of practical advice, which, if followed closely, are sure to improve every aspect of your life. If you don't believe that, here's an example of how the rules work for me. I recently wrote this letter to a favorite Bajoran customer. Dear esteemed customer, it's that time of year again. The Bajoran Gratitude Festival is only a few days away. And in keeping with our tradition here at Quark's, we will celebrate the festival by allowing you to express your gratitude to me and to Quark's. I like to think that Quark's isn't just my bar, it's your bar too. And right now, your bar needs a new coat of paint. Now, I know painting isn't always fun, but think of the satisfaction, the sense of purpose, not to mention the exercise you and customers like you will get by doing the job. Think of how it will help ease your guilt. I know how miserable you must be, knowing that your overdue bar tab is placing an unnecessary financial burden on me and on Quark's. True, I suppose I could get a couple of Nausicaans to see to the collection of your tab, but the only people who would really enjoy that would be the Nausicaans. And personally, if there's one thing I can't abide, it's a cheery Nausicaan. Now, painting Quark's won't forgive your debt. Hell, it won't even reduce it. But it will make you feel better. A lot better than if you were visited by the Nausicaans. And there's nothing I like so much as making my customers feel better. Peldor Joy, Quark, son of Keldar, proprietor, Quark's Bar, Grill, Gaming House, and Holosuite Arcade, a wholly owned subsidiary of Quark Enterprises, Inc. Then I wrote a letter to my brother. Dear Rom, I'm painting the bar tomorrow. Or to be more precise, you and a bunch of deadbeats are painting the bar tomorrow. Be there. Your loving brother, Quark. Trust me, by the time they were done, the bar never looked better. And what do I have to thank for that? The 111th rule of acquisition. Treat people in your debt like family. Exploit them ruthlessly. Rule number 112. Let's face it, we've all thought about breaking this rule at one time or another. I mean, almost every boss has one. Usually the family is rich, so there's the inheritance factor to consider. Plus, forbidden fruit is always the most succulent. But don't do it. That's right. Though your lobes may be a quiver, all tingly and taut, walk away. No matter how beautiful she is, no matter how crooked her teeth, how bulbous her nose, no matter how willing and submissive she might be, believe me, it is not worth it. Don't ever, under any circumstances, no matter how tempted you might be, forget the 112th rule of acquisition. Never have sex with the boss's sister. Rule number 113. That said, here's the thing about Rule 113, better known as the rule that dares not speak its name. The Ferengi are a male-dominated society. The rules of acquisition are written for males, by males, and about males. And if that weren't bad enough, let me just remind you there are no female bosses on Ferenginar. And for that matter, no female employees. I will say no more. The rest is silence. Thus, I record here, without further comment, the 113th rule of acquisition. Always have sex with the boss. Yikes. Rule number 121.
With that happy, slimy taste.
In the financial history of Ferenginar, there have been many success stories, but few as impressive as that of Vorp and Sluggo, the creators of that ubiquitous beverage with that happy, slimy taste, Eelwasser. Vorp and Sluggo were boyhood friends, boon companions, almost since their fathers signed the rental agreements on their mothers' wombs. One of their favorite games was stomping around in the Bowog Bog, just a short jaunt from their home in Upper Bowog Bay. Now, Vorp, some would say, was, well, short on brains and long on enthusiasm, not to mention slavishly loyal to the smarter, craftier Sluggo. So, whenever Sluggo was in need of a good chuckle, and Sluggo loved to laugh, he would convince Vorp to do something funny.
Hey, Vorp, we all need air to breathe, right? Have you bought any air today? You don't want to run out. Say, I'll give you a day's worth for that half slip in your pocket.
Vorp thought it sounded like a good idea and gave Sluggo his half slip of latinum. Then he asked Sluggo for his air.
Oh, right, Vorp. Okay, take a deep breath. Yeah, breathe in a kilo full. That's all you paid for, but that'll get you through the day. Of course, then you'll have to buy some more.
So, Vorp took a deep breath, while Sluggo laughed his head off. When Vorp would run out of latinum to buy air, Sluggo kept himself amused by getting Vorp to talk to females or eat a few kilos of sand. Which brings us to that fateful day in the Bowog Bog when Sluggo saw a particularly fetid pool of burbling muck.
Hey, Vorp, that muck looks good to drink.
The words were hardly out of Sluggo's mouth before Vorp got down on his hands and knees and started slurping. Sluggo stood and contemplated Vorp's prodigious posterior, which was pointed straight up into the air as Vorp bobbed his head to lap at the muck. But before Sluggo could give his friend's rear a quick kick, Vorp turned back, his mouth slick with slime, and through algae-stained teeth uttered those 4 famous words. Tastes like eel. And thus Eelwasser was born. Soon, bottle after bottle of this natural treat was rolling off the assembly line, all featuring the smiling faces of Vorp and Sluggo, pond scum dripping from their chins.
With that happy, slimy taste.
And so it went for 40 years. The 2 friends bought a huge mansion and lived there with their only companions, a menagerie of albino fang cats, all of whom developed a taste for Eelwasser. People shook their heads in confusion at their unconventional lifestyle, but one thing was certain. Vorp and Sluggo were friends. That is, until...
With that happy, slimy
Sluggo Cola. A consortium of beverage makers, brought to the brink of bankruptcy by the perennial boom market for Eelwasser, finally came up with a new drink that beat Eelwasser in hundreds of clandestine taste tests. But the beverage makers knew they needed a marketing gimmick to overcome Eelwasser's media domination. And so, in one of the most cunning coups in Ferengi business history, they secretly offered Sluggo 65% of the profits from their new beverage in exchange for being allowed to name it after him. The thought of only one algae-stained grinning chin on a beverage label appealed to Sluggo, and as Sluggo so succinctly put it,
65% beats 50% any day.
the rest, as they say, is history. Sluggo moved out of the mansion. Sluggo Cola grabbed a 71% share of the beverage market, and Vorp died alone and heartbroken, devoured by a horde of ravenous albino fang cats, which had grown too despondent to feed. Vorp had learned a hard lesson, and he ordered it inscribed on his memorial. If you ever visit the Bowog Bog, put on your wading boots and slog your way to the Vorp Memorial. There you will find, carved for all to see, Vorp's immortal last words. Words of wisdom, which soon became the 121st rule of acquisition. Everything is for sale, even friendship. Rule number 123. At Hopawup Academy for Young Loblings, the core curriculum was based on the rules of acquisition. We learned that those Ferengi who created the rules were inspired by the blessed exchequer of the divine treasury. The enlightened 123rd rule was inspired in the darkest of times. It was found in the diary of Roplop of Ranglehorn. To get my money's worth and to take a deserved day off, I had those 2 fat-lobe Ferengi, Gala and Kono, whom I hired to help record this epic audiobook, dramatize the entries from Roplop's diary. Okay, Ram, play it.
Day 1. Today, after long preparation, we have started our descent. The words that Professor Derville, in his heavy, sploonish mountain accent, spoke those many weeks ago still ring in my ears.
Hi, come with me on a journey to the center of Ferengi.
At least, that's what I think he said. Who can tell with that accent? Day 5. Still going down. Day 16. Reached the shore of an underground sea. Built a boat of buoyant pumice stone and set sail. Got violently seasick. Threw up all over Professor Derville.
You thrown up my Guten! My head is no schnickten globen!
Whatever he shouted at me, I couldn't understand. Day 18. Left sea behind. Found a cave full of never-before-seen wild fungi. Professor Derville exclaimed,
Behold, the mysteries of the underworld!
Day 24. 8 fungi samples. Yummy! Day 30. Fungi poisoning subsiding. Feel much better. Day 46. Professor Derville has finally reached a decision.
We will take the Luft passageway.
Personally, I would have gone right, but he's the professor. Day 51. Still hopelessly lost. Professor now claims to have said Richt passageway, but I'm sure he said Luft. Day 59. Where the hell are we? Food running low. Professor going blind. Day 83. Professor Derville, though blind, whispers in my lobe.
Oh, Rob, love, I see the glow of light coming from one of the many tunnels. The tunnel.
Maybe he's right. We'll wait another day before eating him. Day 84. Professor Derville was right. There was a glow, but it wasn't a way out. It was a vast deposit of pure latinum. I am rich and very hungry. Day 90. Professor Derville picked clean. He was good. Still hungry. Day 123. Weak. Starving. Still rich. Can't go on. I just can't go on. Really. Can't go on.
Rom, stop the recording. Whose book is this? Thus ends the sad tale of Roplop of Rangahorn. Perhaps you know it from the famous Hall Suite drama starring Flink as Professor Derville and Gormy Gormatop as Roplop. But trust me, the Hall drama is good, but the rule of acquisition is even better. Scribbled under day 85 in Roplop's journal, we see the first mention of the 123rd rule of acquisition. Even a blind man can recognize the glow of latinum. Rule 139. Okay. Time for a little Ferengi language lesson. Rom, put on the language tape.
Wife in Ferengi is booplop, from boop, which means to serve, and lop, which means one who does a certain thing. Brother in Ferengi is duplop, from dupe, which means to get, and of course, lop. So, to Ferengi there is no more obvious rule than booplop boop, duplop doop.
Or in your less poetic human dialect, the 139th rule of acquisition. Wives serve, brothers inherit. And that's one of my brother Rom's favorite rules. In fact, it's also one of my favorite rules, along with the 6th rule of acquisition. Never allow family to stand in the way of opportunity. Sorry, Rom. Rule 162. When my father, Keldar, as you humans would say, bit the dust, I was bereft. I was still a relatively young Ferengi, and I was concerned that I would not have anyone to instruct me in the finer points of Ferengi philosophy. Then I remembered that my father and Latinum were never exactly on a first-name basis, and so I didn't feel so bad. After all, I was no worse off without him than I was with him. Needless to say, I didn't have much hope when it came to the opening of my legacy chest, the gift every Ferengi father leaves behind for his son. Sure enough, when I opened the chest, what did I find? Deeds to tracts of lands containing rich mineral deposits? Not a chance. Incriminating documents that would allow me to blackmail the Grand Nagus? No. So, what did he leave behind? One word. Head skirts. Dozens and dozens of head skirts. And I don't even wear head skirts. Fafa knew that. My first thought was to throw myself onto the floor and kick and scream until the blessed exchequer descended from the divine treasury and gave me my heart's desire. So I kicked and I screamed. But no one came. Finally, hoarse and exhausted, I grabbed one of the head skirts to dry my tears. And then I noticed something. There was writing on the head skirt. I survived the Bowog flood. The Bowog flood? I'd learned about that in school. In 1798, the Bowog Dam mysteriously burst, only days after its warranty expired, and thousands of Ferengi drowned. Had my father really been at Bowog? Then I noticed another skirt, an ancient threadbare garment bearing the motto, "I stood tall during the great earthquake of 12,023. Soon I realized that all of the skirts bore witness to one great disaster or another. I stayed cool during the eruption of Mount Tuba. I kept solvent despite the financial collapse of 15,799. And I dodged the timber weevil stampede, Weevilville, 9,183. A cold shiver went down my spine. Could my father have been some kind of foul specter, moving from one disaster to another throughout Ferengi history? Or did he just have bad taste in clothes? But then it hit me, like a headbutt from a Klingon. My father was trying to teach me one final lesson, because each headskirt had a price tag attached, which meant someone had bought them, and more important, someone had sold them. In the midst of all that suffering and death, someone had been racking their brains to come up with a nice, catchy slogan to put on a headskirt. My father had passed to me a vivid illustration of the 162nd rule of acquisition. Even in the worst of times, someone makes a profit. Rule number 181. Every Ferengi schoolboy knows the story of Milch the Wanderer, how he traveled the spaceways, meeting primitive aliens and selling them Ferengi beads and trinkets in exchange for, well, whatever they had. Who can forget how he purchased the entire planet of Wahakan for a single crate of Ferengi tooth sharpeners? Yes, when it came to shafting the natives, Milch had the magic touch. Needless to say, Milch was one of Ferenginar's greatest heroes. Even to this day, every Ferengi hopes to make the pilgrimage to Cruelis Prime, to climb the stairs of Guilfoyle, and to stand on the stone of Deaver, where the Cruelers, realizing they just sold their entire female population for a fruit basket, finally ended Milch's glorious career, not to mention his life. It's a long journey to Cruelis, but it is worth it, because it was there, on that holy spot, before the flames consumed him, that Milch uttered his famous last words.
Ouch!
I mean, aside from that. And my eyes tear and my breast swells with pride as I recall Milch's final defiant cry, as recorded in the 181st Rule of Acquisition.
Not even dishonesty can tarnish the shine of profit. Go!
Rule 189. I'll now share with you a letter I wrote to my nephew Nog. You'll see how he's put into action the 189th Rule of Acquisition. To Cadet First Class Nog, Starfleet Academy, Pike Hall, Room 714, San Francisco, California, 9411 6SF 8911, North American Administrative District, Earth, Sector 001, United Federation of Planets. Dear Nog, just heard the news from your father. I have to admit, I was more than a little concerned that attending Starfleet Academy would dull your instincts for profit. But to find out that you have been implicated as the leader of a Domjot gambling ring among the cadets, I am so proud. Now, Rom seems to think that you're concerned about how this might affect your Starfleet career. I hope he has, as usual, misread the situation. But on the slim chance you may actually be a bit worried, let me put things in perspective. Sure, you may have lost some status among the other cadets, and yes, this incident will undoubtedly go down on your permanent record, and perhaps in some not-so-far-distant future, humanocentric powers that be may use this as an excuse to prevent you from achieving that captaincy you have your heart set on. But believe me when I tell you, it's worth it. At least, I certainly hope it was worth it. I've been told you can make a lot of money hustling Domjot. If you need investment counseling, you know who to call. Your loving Uncle Quark. That nephew of mine may have been corrupted by Federation values, but at least he apparently still remembers the 189th Rule of Acquisition. Let others keep their reputation. You keep their latinum. Rule number 203. In my life, I have only met two people who actually have written a rule of acquisition. One was Grand Negazek, leader of the Ferengi Alliance and the greatest business mind in the Alpha Quadrant. The other was Stumpy Strope, restaurateur, bartender extraordinaire, philosopher, and friend. I met him while I was a ship's cook on a Ferengi trader, tramping around the galaxy seeking my fortune. He owned a watering hole on the frontier world of Rough Landing. We used to stop there every 2 months to pick up supplies. I always looked forward to those visits and the happy times at Stumpy's bar. I'd stay after closing, and we'd drink long into the night. It was Stumpy who taught me how to mix my first black hole, to run a double wheel, and to shortchange even the most vigilant customers. But one thing we never talked about was Stumpy's right leg, or lack thereof. He didn't seem to want to discuss it, and I didn't press it. But then came my final visit. I'd signed the lease for Quarks, and I wanted to pay my respects before saying goodbye to Rough Landing forever. Stumpy and I had a hell of a time that night. Black holes, flaming novas, blood wine. We drank it all. And by the dawn, even Stumpy's ears seemed to be weaving unsteadily. And that's when I finally got up the courage to ask the big question. Stumpy, how'd you get the name Stumpy? He looked at me for a long time. His eyes seemed to mist over as if recalling a great sorrow. Quarky, you're a fine Ferengi lad. So I have to believe you know your rules of acquisition.
I do.
So, you know Rule 203? Like my own name. At that drunken moment, I was desperately trying to recall my own name when Stumpy leaned over the bar, propped himself up on his one good leg, then tilted his head close to mine. Our noses were almost touching, and when he spoke, it was with the fire of righteousness. And one too many flaming novas. Just before I passed out from the fumes, this is what I heard. Rule 203. I wrote it. And as my consciousness faded, I finally remembered what I like to call Stumpy's rule, the 203rd rule of acquisition. New customers are like razor-toothed greenworms. They can be succulent, but sometimes they bite back. Rule number 211. So, keeping Stumpy's rule in mind, I went off to open Quark's. And that's where Rule 211 comes in. You'll find it in every Ferengi business establishment, both on Ferenginar and off-world. Sometimes it's written large across the walls. Other times it's subtly tucked away in some obscure corner. But believe me, it's there. It's always there. 15 little words. The same 15 words that are said to every graduate of the Har-Yel-Vard Academy when they receive their diplomas. 15 words that form the foundation of all Ferengi business. Try to make profit without them, and you are doomed to fail. Remember them, and everything is possible. Honor the 211th rule of acquisition. Employees are the rungs on the ladder of success. Don't hesitate to step on them.
No!
Damn good advice. Rule number 229. The greatest sculptor in the history of Ferenginar was Milo the Mold Master of the city of Glunge. You may have seen his famous statue, Lance and his nose flute, which still stands in the Glunge marketplace today. But Milo's greatest work was his statue of Voshma the Voluptuous. This life-size representation of a naked Ferengi female was so breathtakingly beautiful that it was said no male could look on it and not fall hopelessly in love. Maybe it was the perfectly carved nose, maybe it was the delicate lobes, or maybe it was just the fact that she was made of solid gold-pressed latinum. But if Voshma had many admirers, none was purer in his devotion than Milo himself. Some say Milo even spoke to the lifelike statue, that he treated it in every way as if it were his own wife. Let's just say that Milo got very little work done. But one day, a strange thing happened. As he was contemplating Voshma's perfect golden hindquarters, Milo heard a buzzing sound in his workshop. Open your palm. Confused, Milo did as he was told. To his amazement, a small creature landed on his open hand. The creature looked like a teeny-tiny, itsy-bitsy Ferengi with wings. I am Snip, spirit of love, and few on Ferenginar love as strongly as you do. Such devotion deserves reward. Now, this sounded good to Milo. After all, no Ferengi ever turned down a reward. So, Milo asked what Snip had in mind. Snip smiled. You adore Voshma so much, but your love is wasted on cold, hard latinum. I will make Voshma a real Ferengi female, so that your passion can be consummated and your love made real. Now, Milo was a quick thinker, and he did some quick calculations, and he came to a quick conclusion, and he told Snip thanks, but no thanks. Then Milo brought his hands together with a thunderous clap. That clap could be heard clear across the city of Glunge, and Snip was no more. Milo wiped his hands on his pants and went back to contemplating the golden beauty that was Bajma. Though I'm sure he was sorely tempted, Milo was obviously a firm believer in the 229th rule of acquisition. Latinum lasts longer than lust. Rule number 255. The following article appeared on the front page of the Ferengi Acquirer on Globova 5th, 18,083. Gouge mining magnate escapes death, wife charged in murder attempt. In the early morning hours, Latinum mining king Squeeb, son of Bean, was hauled from the flaming wreckage of his skimmer by 2 members of his private medical staff. Though suffering from various injuries, Squeeb is expected to make a full recovery. Shortly after his rescue, FCA liquidators arrested the victim's wife, Jubletta, and charged her with attempted murder. It seems Jubletta had struck her husband over the head with a bar of latinum, stuffed his unconscious body into his skimmer, and then programmed its autopilot to crash into one of Squeeb's own gouge mines. Luckily, unbeknownst to his wife, Squeeb has a duridium plate in his head, an unwanted souvenir from his stint in the military during the Lytasian conflict. This plate cushioned the blow, enabling Squeeb to regain consciousness at the last moment and seize control of the skimmer, causing a fiery but not fatal accident. Initial reports indicating that Jubletta was having an affair with Squeeb's accountant, Vinks, and was conspiring with him to take over Squeeb's financial empire seemed to be in error. Vinks was questioned by liquidators, but released on Squeeb's request. No charges have been filed against the accountant. Now, read between the lines, and you'll see that duridium plate or no duridium plate, Squeeb was a shrewd businessman. Even in a crisis, he didn't forget the 255th rule of acquisition. A wife is a luxury. A smart accountant is a necessity. Rule number 261. It said something strange happened to Squeeb, the Latinum mining king, after his brush with death. He began to spend his days wandering about the countryside, smelling the bog flowers, watching the suns set. Obviously, the man was deeply ill. But before he could seek professional help, fate, in the form of a holodocumentary he was watching, dealt him a cruel hand. The program detailed the plight of Ferengi gouge miners. Gouge mining isn't much fun. The hours are bad, the pay is low, and the workers have a life expectancy only slightly larger than a Tellurian gnat. Squeeb actually started worrying about his workers. Lost in his madness, Squeeb decided to see for himself how his miners lived. Traveling to one of his largest gouge mines, he personally donned a pair of protective lobe shields and descended into the sweltering hot mine. There, he revealed his presence to the miners and announced that he wanted to hear any grievances they might have against him. It is said that by the time the miners were through with him, all that was left of Squeeb was the battered duridium plate that once lined his skull. So, let's have a moment of silence for poor confused Squeeb. And while we're at it, how about we dedicate the 261st rule of acquisition to his memory? A wealthy man can afford anything except a conscience. See what happens when you forget your rules? Rule number 266. This audiobook was intended as a public service, a way to help you pathetic humans achieve your true profit potential, which admittedly in most of your cases isn't much. But hey, you gotta try. And in the spirit of service, I thought it might be a good idea, as we draw to a close, to provide some specific examples of what to do when your misuse of these rules leads you astray. In other words, in business, as in life, It always pays to have a good lie ready for emergencies. Here are a few of the best. Your payment is en route by subspace transfer. When I mentioned that profit figure, I clearly stated that it was only an estimate. I have no independent recollection of those events. Ear massages are commonly exchanged during Ferengi business negotiations. Quark? Never heard of him. And, my personal favorite, it's my brother Rom's fault. Try them out. Once you see how well they work, you'll never tell the truth again. And never forget the 266th rule of acquisition. When in doubt, lie. Rule number 284. Well, you're almost there. Just a few more moments to go. But before you finish this audiobook and put it on your shelf in a place of honor, take the box this audiobook came in and walk over to the nearest mirror. Hold the box up to the mirror. Now look at yourself holding the box in the mirror. Ask yourself why you bought it. Oh, sure, I'm clever, hilarious, and erudite, and my audiobook makes a great gift. But we both know that's not why you shelled out your hard-earned latinum for your very own copy. No. You wanted something more valuable. You wanted my wisdom. You wanted the inside knowledge that have made the Ferengi a force to be reckoned with in the business world. In other words, an edge on the competition. You want that edge. You need that edge. Yeah, I know what you're going to tell me. You're a human. You're better than us Ferengi. You've evolved beyond greed. Well, I say to you, study that figure in the mirror. Look at yourself. Look long and hard. And you'll come to realize that you are living proof of the 284th rule of acquisition. Deep down, everyone's a Ferengi.
You have been listening to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Legends of the Ferengi by Quark, as told to Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe. It was abridged for audio by George Truitt. It was read by Quark, otherwise known as Armin Shimmerman. Linda Woolman was paid piles of latinum to direct Quark in this production. Congratulations, Linda. Additional Ferengis were played by Tom Reedy and John Beach. The recording engineer was Jocelyn Gonzalez, live from the field from the planet Ferenginar. Editing and post-production by Michael Jones. The mix engineer was Jocelyn. No, Jocelyn was our field engineer. No, I really do think it was Michael Jones again. Yes, the original music was composed and performed by Michael Jones again.
All right. Jay Wasco helped me write those jingles. Negus knows I paid him enough latinum.
He's lovely. The associate producer was Florence Burrow Adams. Legends of the Ferengi was produced and directed by Karen Frillman. Heck of a job. This has been a wonderful, stimulating, yet another presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio.